Today's story is going to be a little different from the norm, as we're going to be taking a look at something that actually happened to me, personally. Ironically, I already made a video about the time when I almost died on the highway. If you haven't seen that story, I will be linking it in the description down below. Today's story is unfortunately a similar setting, but with much different circumstances, as I was a victim of a road rage attack on the freeway. Before we go further into this video, if you have your own stories to share that you would like for me to read on this channel, be sure to submit them to my email, thetruekingofcreepy@gmail.com. It's worth mentioning that at the time this incident took place, I lived a fairly ordinary life. I've never been the most extraordinary person or lived the life of some partying rock star. Even now, I like to play my video games, make YouTube videos, watch movies, and go to stores or maybe see the sights in my state. Nothing too outlandish. When this attack occurred, I was in the middle of my 4th year of college. Most of my time was spent working or at home, doing cheap things a college student could afford to do, while I balanced work and taking care of my father. I would drive over an hour to get to class, which I only went to about 3 times a week, with one night being for evening courses. Every time I drove to class, I would take the same freeway for most of the trip. Now this is important, as it's one of the more dangerous freeways in my state. This road has a reputation for very bad traffic at various times of the day. This leads to an atmosphere of most people who use it trying to get on the freeway, move from point A to B as quickly as possible, and then leave the freeway as fast as they can. Even the police often leave most of this road alone, as a minor traffic stop can lead to dangerous traffic congestion. And I'm sure you've seen the videos of police officers getting hurt or worse due to accidents on the freeway during these stops. Most of them just don't want to go near this one. This is also one of those freeways that appears to go on forever, and there have been many cases of truck drivers especially falling asleep at the wheel after a long commute, or negligent driving caused by more problems than already exist on this road. These are the circumstances I found myself in on this freeway, and because of them, I tried very hard to mind my own business, all while obeying the speed limit the best I can, while also staying with traffic and getting to class. That was how I drove on this road every time I was there. I was driving at about 65 miles per hour, which was about the speed limit of the road, and I noticed a black van speeding and weaving in and out between other cars in my rearview mirror. I'm not sure where they were going, but they sure thought they needed to get there in a hurry. Much faster than traffic was going on this road, which was already moving at a normal pace. It's worth mentioning that on this road it does get a bit congested, like I said, so it can be hard to get out of the way of other people. But I certainly did my best when I noticed someone so deliberately going at least 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. Those aren't the type of people you want to just sit in front of and play around with. I'm not really sure what set this person off. It was maybe traffic on the road, or maybe it was the fact that in their mind I just didn't move out of their way fast enough. A lot of people have that kind of attitude on the road. Instead of waiting the 2 to 5 seconds it would have probably taken for me to turn on my signal and move over, as I had to wait for the person in my blind spot to commit to either speeding up or slowing down, the reckless driver behind me decided that they needed to be where they were going, right now. The black van swerved behind the car next to me, almost hitting them, over another lane of traffic, before somehow accelerating even more and cutting over 2 lanes of traffic again right in front of my car, nearly hitting the person next to me and my car as well. I remember in that moment just thinking something in between the thoughts of, I can't believe that van can even move that fast, and what a dick, to myself. I stayed behind the car, but I didn't exactly want to go 95 on a 65 freeway. Yeah, the police weren't common, but I'm not going to risk losing my license just to prove a point. So I stayed considerably behind this car for maybe the next 5 seconds of driving. This whole story sounds longer than it is because the entire incident must have happened within 10 seconds of my life, because I noticed him either toss or drop something angrily out of his side driver window almost onto the road in a bouncing motion towards my car. In the few seconds I had to think, I figured it must have been a fast food cup or something the van's driver just didn't want to deal with. Maybe he was being an ass, but overall it probably didn't matter. It stood to reason that if this person was enough of a jerk to drive 90-something on the road and almost hit several different people, this person must have also been the type to not mind littering. Whatever the item was, though, I noticed that it hit the road, but it almost seemed weightless somehow. And the reason I say this is because it was now back in the air at about the height of a car windshield. Unfortunately, when you're driving at freeway speeds, even following the speed limit, you can't exactly just swerve out of the way of something on a busy road unless there's some kind of warning to it, or you actually have an open lane next to you. The small item hit my windshield with a loud and thunderous crack. In the split second I heard the glass shatter, I thought that it was going to break right through my windshield, but I noticed it almost stuck, staying suspended in the windshield for maybe a second. And where it stuck was what truly terrified me. It was right in front of my face, right where my head was and exactly in my field of vision. When I say right in front of my face, I mean directly in front of it. There must have been only a half-inch of glass left intact that prevented this item from ripping through my head like an oversized bullet. I noticed that it was metallic and cylindrical, shaped like a thermos or drink container of some kind. And this thermos must have only stuck in my car windshield for half a second to a second, as it did not break all the way through and continued to fly over my car, almost in slow motion. Again, adrenaline might have had a bit to do with my perception of time during this story. I noticed that the spiderweb pattern of shattered glass had now covered my entire windshield, and I followed the van for another few seconds, in shock, just making sure to remember the license plate of the vehicle. I couldn't believe that someone would be willing to almost kill someone else over something like this, and I'm still not even entirely sure it was intentional, but it seemed far too coincidental with their anger and rushed behavior to not be an attack. I pulled over to the side of the road, and needless to say, I did call the police. Unfortunately, and as is all too common to hear in stories like this, they were not much help to me. They told me they looked up the license plate, but that it didn't match any of the cars of that type. I want to believe them that maybe the car was stolen and there wasn't really anything they could do, or maybe I made some kind of mistake in my memorization, but as someone who has researched enough of other people's stories to hear that often the same resolution occurs, it seems like the police just don't often care about instances like this unless someone ends up dead. Even then, I'm sure there's a lot of people who just have the attitude of, well, I didn't know that victim anyways. Needless to say, I decided that it wasn't worth going to class that evening. This was the second time I had almost died in my car in a handful of years, and it still makes me hesitant to enjoy driving or take trips without them being necessary. The scariest part of this whole thing to me is just how easy it is for someone to take your life while on the road, and how hard it is for them to be held accountable. If I had died that day, no one would have ever known who actually did it. They wouldn't have run some kind of extensive DNA tests on the cup, and even if they did, I doubt that person was in any database. It was just a normal person being insane. When you're driving, you feel like you're in complete control of your own vehicle, but you often forget that you have so little control of everyone else around you. Most of the time, there's nothing more than half an inch of glass and the sanity of strangers separating the difference between your life continuing or your name ending up mentioned on the evening news. If you enjoyed today's story, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. This was a true story from my life that still actually creeps me out even thinking about it and how close I was to not being here anymore. And if you have your own stories to submit to the King of Creepy, please be sure to check out the email address I mentioned earlier on, thetruekingofcreepy@gmail.com. We appreciate all of you, and we hope you have a fantastic day.